Hi, I'm George Crump with VergeIO. Today we're going to talk about our virtual data center technology that really sets us apart from from VMware and other VMware alternatives. You can think about a virtual data center. It's our take on multi-tenancy, and you can think of a virtual data center in the same way you might think of a virtual machine. A virtual machine encapsulates a physical server into essentially a file and makes it very easy to move it around and do things with it. A virtual data center does the exact same thing. It encapsulates, instead of a physical server, the entire data center essentially into a file, or better said, an object. And then within that data center would contain all the VMs, all the storage settings, and all the network settings required for that virtual data center to operate. Okay. Now you can have there's multiple reasons why you might use these virtual data centers. The most universal kind of ties in with where we've been going with data protection and things like that in the previous videos. But the most obvious is for disaster recovery. So let's say we have a situation where we lose this entire site for some reason or another. We need to bring that up in a remote location. Well, what you can do with a virtual data center is essentially copy the entire environment in one movement to a remote location. Now, what's beautiful about this, in the past, I had done some disaster recovery planning and testing. And what always would trip people up is the challenges with making sure they got all the network settings and all the configuration files and all the little things that can go wrong in a disaster. Now, most good IT guys can work their way through it and kind of slog their way through it. It's the slogging part that's hard and frankly time consuming. This way you get it right the first time. Now, all we need in the remote site is a couple of servers. Like obviously you want to size that to make sure that if this site does become production someday, that you're able to facilitate pretty decent operations. But we'll just say for now, this is a little 2-node setup. And then we'll set up asynchronous replication between the two sites. We use our snapshot technology to update that. We'll talk about that in another video. And so now I've got a perfect DR situation. I've captured everything I need to make sure that I can recover from the disaster. And so when you do have to declare a disaster, your success rate is very high, and really success rate on the first try is very high. And that's what's really critical in a disaster. One of the also challenging things about disaster recovery is testing. How do I test this? Well, in our environment with, 4 or 5 mouse clicks, you can set up a test environment very, very quickly. So all you would do is, now obviously the challenge is this IP address is running here. Within a virtual data center, though, the IP addresses can be the same up here and in the DR site. It's just the IP address for the virtual data center itself that needs to be different. So what you would do is you bring this up into production, give it an IP address, essentially making this a lab. And then from there, you could log in and do all the testing you want to do. Like I said, just a few mouse clicks, we've shown customers a failover to another site, and we can do the whole thing in 5 or 6, not even 5 minutes. So very, very quickly. So that's just one use case, though. Now, another use case is to have multiple virtual data centers within your primary physical data center. Now, you might use this if you're a service provider, a cloud service provider, or a managed service provider. You might use this for create a virtual data center for every customer. The value in doing that is that these are now isolated from each other. So if something goes wrong here, it doesn't impact what's going on in the other virtual data centers. That's despite the fact that all the hardware up here is still being shared, right? And so it gives you some capability in that regard. Another use case might be in your data center, if you're not a service provider, might be to have a production copy of your environment, a test dev environment, and then maybe a QA version, right? And so you could have all 3 of those going at the same time. Another example might be we do really well in school districts. And so some school districts will set up virtual data center for high school, one for middle school, and one for elementary school. So you could do things like that as well. And again, you can have different people in charge of administering each of these virtual data centers. They can't, unless you give them access, see the other virtual data centers. It also makes bringing up a new customer or a new site very, very easy, because all you have to do is snapshot or clone that, and you've got a perfect virtual data center ready to go for the next use case. So virtual data center is very powerful. The last thing you can do that we should mention you could do with virtual data centers, you could hard allocate specific assets. So if I had a bunch of servers within my instance that were, say, GPU based, I could make it so that only certain virtual data centers could access those type of resources. So it allows you to do things like that. So that's our virtual data center technology. It's our take on multi-tenancy. Very powerful for a lot of different use cases, and our customers really like taking advantage of it. I'm George Crump with VergeIO. Thank you.